Free to Feel Free podcast. Today we have Mr. Jared Wharton from Fob Brewing in today. I'm excited to have him here, longtime friend, fellow veteran, entrepreneur. He's going to talk about beers, and we were talking about excellent conspiracy theories earlier, so I'm sure he's going to bring some good ones on.
Well, thank you.
And co-hosted by Andy Suri, S-E-W-R-U-Y. A lot of people don't know how to say it, but it's Andy Suri.
Should I tell him my social and all that stuff too?
Well, I mean, it's going to be...
We're spelling names and like, that's all right.
I'll give him your private Instagram and all that other stuff.
All that good stuff, yeah.
I mean, we're feeling free to feel free, right? So I can feel free to share.
Apparently so. And like, I mean, I guess all my personal information is free now. So I thought I was worth so much more.
Is it free?
I don't know.
I'm sure advertisers like sell it to somebody for something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's free to them.
Why can't somebody make the fucking app for that? Seriously. Like, why can't we get that worked out?
I mean, you can have my information, but you got to pay for it.
Yeah. Just somebody could hack the machine so that you can just demand your cut. I don't know. That'd be great.
You get your own affiliate code for yourself. It's like cash back, like getting like a credit card or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be like completing the circle on the pyramid scheme. In like...
Yeah, royalties.
Yeah. Or maybe just like taxes. Like eventually, isn't that how the mortgage crisis happened? They just sold the mortgages enough time that the commissions on the sales of the mortgages were worth more than the mortgage itself. And then the whole thing fell down.
Is that how it happened?
I think that was kind of part of it. Once they started repackaging that shit, then... They'd get packaged and packaged and packaged, and every time they did that, somebody made money on the transaction, and it got to the point where more money was made passing hot garbage around than the hot garbage was worth in the first place, which just kind of sounds like our federal budget.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I want some of that game.
There's many a days where I think maybe I should figure out how to be part of that hustle.
Get a printing press. That's what they do.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, we're way off the rails fast. You're welcome.
All right. So, Jared, welcome to the show. Obviously, you can tell we're going to be highly organized and focused in this podcast.
I like it.
And it's just amazing to me. I'm going to keep repeating it, that people just want to sit around and listen to us talk about things, but...
We think they do.
We think they do. We'll just see the number of downloads. If we pass 10, if you're the 11th download, you're going to win something. But so Jared is based, well, your operation is in DuPont, Washington, right outside Joint Base Lewis McChord.
Yep.
And how long have you been running your brewery?
We just hit 4 years.
Right on. I remember like standing with you in the garage where we started Combat Flip Flops and like talking about starting it. It was just because we met at the Bunker Labs. Is that where we met?
No, we met because I think I sent you an email and said, "Hey, you're a vet, you're in business." And I sent a few emails out to other vets and businesses basically saying, you guys are doing it. I want to talk to you. I think you gave me exactly a half hour of your time and you gave me some gold. You used the sail around the world.
Yeah, the manifestation part. Yeah.
Yeah. And
think it, say it, write it down, do it.
Yeah. And it's come in handy, because one of the points you made to me back then was there's going to be times you have to, look at your wife and explain that, hey, if we want to get here, there's going to be some tough times between here and there. And, I've had to remind my own wife of that same conversation that I went back that day and shared with her. So thank you.
And she still likes me, which is odd, right? It's like, well, Griff said it was. No, we've all been there. Just had to sacrifice a ton.
Yeah.
But I think all of us would also say it's better than sitting in a cubicle somewhere.
Yeah.
Soul sucking behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to do a job like that, Andy?
Behind a keyboard?
Yeah, just in a cubicle somewhere.
In a cubicle. No. Not in a cubicle. I mean, now that I work for myself, I spend more time in front of a computer than I ever did before. Prior to this, I was in construction and climbing things and getting dirty and going home tired and sore and that kind of thing for 20 years. But no, not cubicle work, office space. You got 4 bosses, all that shit. No, none of that.
You ever had to do a job like that?
The weirdest job I had was in between getting out of the Army and getting the doors to FOB open. I worked for the state. I did fraud investigations. So I had a cubicle and a van set up for surveillance. So kind of split my time in two weird places that just seemed really uncomfortable to me. But yeah, I got to see a little bit of that bureaucracy of like you said, 4 different bosses and everyone with a different priority.
Right. But your cubicle was probably 200-300 horsepower. That's unique. That's pretty fucking cool.
What's your best
really.
fraud story?
I didn't get anything too juicy. I had one where they wanted me to investigate a guy because they knew he was working when he said he wasn't working, or was being paid because of his injury. And then I looked into it. I'm like, the guy literally cut his hand off on a job site. So what do I care if he's out helping his brother do drywall with his one good hand?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not pursuing this. But there was another one. It wasn't my case, but the guys next to me had a guy who had absolutely nothing wrong with his body. But he wore this compression bandage that went from his knuckles of his hand up about mid bicep, and multiple doctors had said there's nothing wrong with this guy's arm, but he insisted there's something wrong with it. And they proved that he was, completely not injured. And then, but they found evidence of, even on his honeymoon, at his wedding, he was wearing this bandage. Like, this was part of him. And shortly after, they finally made the final determination that, you're not getting paid anything. In fact, you owe us money from the time that, you said you were injured. That he was working in his shop, a rusty nail nicked his arm, got an infection, arm cut off from the point where his bandage started. So he manifested that reality, that he had that kind of that foreign limb syndrome of where in his mind that there was something wrong with that arm, and he manifested that into reality. So
what you're saying is, for years, the guy wore a bandage on his arm saying something was wrong with his arm, went back to work, and then he lost his arm.
Correct.
Wow. What? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah. So what do you got going on this week? It's a big week around the FOB, huh?
It is a big week. It's Veterans Day. So we're kind of the spot where all the active duty military and veterans want to come and hang out, have a few beers. So I put together a special menu and went full America on it. I got like apple pie flavored ribs, and so we went all in, and Aaron is making some good barbecue, and we'll be just wall to wall with vets from about 3:00 till closing.
I haven't been down there in a while. Did you guys get a big smoker or a big barbecue
We
machine?
have a big giant smoker that we had brought in from Waxahachie, Texas, and we only smoke our meat over Texas mesquite and do low and slow true barbecue.
Right on.
And what all are you guys doing down there?
Brisket, ribs, pulled pork. On Sundays, I do a crazy double brisket burger. We grind the meat ourselves and cook it ourselves, and everything besides the buns are made in house. So
right on. Are you pitmaster? Who's running it?
No, I've kind of perfected how we do things and made the recipes, and then we brought on Aaron, who has worked in barbecue for a few years, also an Army veteran, and so now he's running the smoker and the kitchen, and so kind of taking what I've come up with and executing it. So.
And what was the decision to kind of go down that road for food, I guess?
Well, especially once COVID hit, let me back up. A long time ago, I always knew that I wanted it to be beer and barbecue. I just felt when I came up with the idea of a forward operating based brewing company, I want to see it all over the country someday. And what goes perfectly together and what is kind of easily translates across the country, and you can put regional flair on it, and that's barbecue. And the same thing with beers. You can always change them a little bit regionally. So I just thought that's a perfect fit. And then, especially looking at the area we're in, like there's no good barbecue. And I figured, well, let's do it. And then when I was really dragging my feet, kind of something you said offline earlier about, excuse me, about feel like you're pouring concrete. Mm-hmm. I was kind of afraid to do that. I was afraid to pour that concrete, and just seeing working from the cash flow we had, and really afraid to dive into a new project. It's like starting a second business. So COVID kicked me in the balls and basically made me say, I'm either doing it or I'm closing up.
Yep.
Yeah, can you talk to us about that? Because I think a lot of people talk about restaurant owners and brewery owners suffering as a result of COVID, but they don't actually talk to any of them. I can't remember hearing any interviews on what specifically happened or what the decisions you made or how hard that was. Because at this point in time, you'd spent 2 years building your business, which means you were barely out of diapers.
Correct. Yeah, we really felt like we were just starting to walk when we were, had the rug pulled out from underneath us. And, we're dealing with capacity limitations and a public that just doesn't want to come for a while. And then trying to make that work and figure out, okay, how do we stay afloat? And that's when I was really regretting that I dragged my feet, because if I had had that smoker, I would have been slinging ribs and brisket out the back door for the last 18 months. Like it was crack, but.
Yeah. So like when COVID started, was there a government mandate that shut things down for you, or was it the fact that people just started coming in? Like talk to us. How did it come down?
Yeah. So I believe it was March 15th, and the March 14th, we had a big comedy night. And then the next day was no indoor service.
So did you get a letter in the mail, an email, a phone call?
No,
somebody come
it was
by?
just the.
Well, the 13th was when Inslee went on and said, all right, I think it was a Sunday, and then it was the following Tuesday, if I remember correctly, was when everything.
That sounds about right.
Was getting, for whatever reason, I always remember March 13th, 2020. Like that's when in Washington, the governor was like, this is what we're doing, and we're doing this 30 days or whatever it was initially.
Right. So to answer your question, the health department sends out the notifications like, hey, you're no longer allowed to do this. And so we're faced with that. Well, what do we do? Do we comply? Do we fight it? And it was tough because it's not just like I'm looking at, I've got to have a brewery license. I've got to have the tavern license. I've got to have the business license. And I'm like, as soon as I fight back, I know they're just going to yank all those from me or refuse to renew them. So we tried to play nice as long as we could. And
but everybody needs to understand, if you're not from the Northwest, it's March in Washington.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Or it's about to be gorgeous.
It's about to be, but at this point in time, people are still coming out of their winter doldrums.
Yeah.
Every now and then we get some brief moments of sunshine, but it's the springtime pissing rain. So it's not like you can even, take your business outside. Okay, no more indoor functions. If people in the warmer climates, people just immediately stuck patios outside, stuck tables outside, everybody goes outside. Right. But just the layout of your business, just where it's located on the building and everything else, it'd be super uncomfortable.
It was. And I looked at it a little bit different. At those initial 2 weeks to flatten the curve or whatever they were saying, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having a little bit of time off for once. I was kind of spending every day going between panicking and just chilled out. But it was like, what am I going to do? Whatever comes will come. But
Did you have your stuff bottled at the time? I mean, could you sell
No,
it?
we barely do any bottling or canning. And as soon as they allowed us to start doing sales to go and stuff, I canned everything I possibly could and tried to let people know, like, hey, don't hold on to this. This isn't your, put it in your, don't buy a case and save it for a rainy day. This is drink it now because it's done super janky. Just drink it. Like, thank you for your support. Drink it now.
Just imagine you just like going and buying every growler you can find.
Yeah,
And like,
literally. And they were sold out. I did have some restaurants selling me their growlers because they're like, people don't want growlers from here. So I was buying from them at cost, and other breweries pitching in and selling me their supplies. And so it was kind of cool because, you learn who supports you, who just talks about, got to support each other, and who actually supports each other. And then you see who your real loyal customers are. And, it was really touching. You have people show up buying growlers of beer that they've never bought a growler before, but they're like, well, I heard you guys are having a hard time, so we're going to come out and support you.
for the young people who don't know what a growler is, how many ounces are in a growler?
Well, we sell them as 64 or 32 ounce growlers.
Okay. So basically a 6-pack.
Yeah.
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 It's just in a big brown bottle.
Big glass jug.
Big old jug on it. I always like the growler.
Me too.
Like I hate going to the store and buying a 6-pack of beer because all the glass and the waste, and I just much prefer to grab a growler.
Yep.
It's clean. Just bring it down to the local pub. Hey man, pour in this. And then do you give a discount? I mean, like what's the pricing difference in going with a growler? I think we should bring the growler back, by the way.
We do pretty good growler sales. So I sell a pint. If you come into FOB, I'll sell you a pint for $6.40.
Okay.
A growler is going to be about $8. So it's a wicked deal.
See, this is why you need to go to the growler.
Yeah. If you like good craft beer, you should be getting growlers filled.
See, we just saved everybody money. That's the reason for having this podcast. Yeah. Feel free, or at least save yourself a decent amount of money on beer. Go to the growler. Save the environment too at the same time.
Yeah.
But since COVID, all the prices have just skyrocketed. They just announced grain prices today are up about 25% across the board.
What?
Yeah. Meat prices for our barbecue that we're doing some have doubled. So, like it's get comfortable being uncomfortable, because I'm not comfortable, and some of our prices are not going to look comfortable too. So.
Well, I told you, man, we should, I just did that trip out to Idaho to kill that bull.
I know.
We should go out. We should go whack some cows and you go drag them back. Let's get a big old truck and bring the 300 black out, and we'll get the skinning knives out, and we'll come back with a couple rugs and all the meat for the barbecue. Do you guys have a big hanging cooler?
Absolutely not. No.
Currently hanging my meat right now. I'm having the sausage party on Friday.
Nice.
Yeah, so Tim and Ron and CQ and all those guys are going to come out, and we have my annual sausage party, which is all going to be in Ranger panties.
Are somebody making your sausage, or?
No, I do all my own meat processing. So I'll usually.
What do you process your sausage with? I've got a pretty awesome meat grinder.
Do you have a meat grinder? How many horses is your grinder?
Oh, it's not. I think I go with 3/4.
Yeah, I've got a 3/4.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's I've gotten beyond the phase of like I used to, just where I'm from at in Iowa. We go and we kill. Mainly we make our sausage out of deer. So deer season, everybody goes out. You go out, you party hunt on these big farms, whack 20 or 30 deer, bring them back, and they have all the processing tables because you're on the pork farms anyway. And then they'll mix it in with the pork fat. And so it's a whole family event. Like grandma down to the grandson are out there. And whether you're shooting them, dragging them, like skinning them, or processing them in the bags, like it's usually a big commercial thing. And over the past couple of years, like a deer, a couple elk, I've just got like a 3/4 horsepower, and like we'll bring a couple people over, and I'll just have plastic tables set up in the house, and we'll just like bring in a haunch, right, process it down, and then I really found that I much prefer to grind my meat right before I cook it. Because the flavor on the meat is at the cell end, like that gets cut through the grinder by the blade. So if you grind your meat and then you freeze it, you essentially freezer burn that end.
Sure.
So the way it tastes in your mouth is nowhere good as if it's freshly ground. And so what we're going to do, I did this last year with my elk. I hung it for 3 weeks and then I grind it right before I cook it, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just what I do is I'll usually just cook it and like freeze it in 2-pound chunks. I'll just throw it out, scale it, weigh it, freeze it, and then I'll pull it out of the freezer, wet age it for a week, and then slice it up, throw it through the grinder, mix my seasonings, and then throw it in the pan.
Nice. Yeah, I you can tell like because I grind our brisket into our own burgers, the difference between that and anything that's ever been frozen is just night and day. It's like you can tell that meat has just been, it's got this weird texture to it.
I remember the first time I got a meat grinder, and I, as an entrepreneur, you're always finding ways to like shave pennies at home. And it's always the thing of like, yeah, I can go buy chicken breast for whatever, $5.99 a pound or whatever they are, or I can buy a whole chicken for $1.99 a pound, take a fillet knife, and 2 minutes later, I've got my chicken breast for $1.99 a pound.
Yeah.
And the first time we made sausage, I went to the store. I can't remember what the Italian sausage was, and then I went and I got like a whole chunk of pork.
Probably just a pork butt for 99 cents a pound.
99 cents a pound. And then I, sliced it up, ran it through the grinder, put all my seasoning in it, and the grinder grinds the seasonings too, so it opens up the ends of those flavor. And I cooked it, and it was literally the best sausage I ever had. And I'm like, wait a second, I can have better tasting food and save money? Yeah, just get yourself a nice meat grinder, buy big chunks of meat, and just take an extra couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. We've another good thing about, I try to find the positive in things if I can. And, during COVID, I'm learning to make sourdough bread and learning to can homemade strawberry jam and blueberry jam. And it was a cool, things I wouldn't have done if I was having to work just regular hours. And so.
Yes. I mean, you learned a lot during your COVID downtime.
Sure. You have to.
Yeah.
We all learned a lot.
Yeah. I think that was, there was a whole bunch of I suppose perspective gained. I think everybody in their own ways. I mean, I have friends that just got really scared. I had friends that rebelled against it, or, across the board, but everybody had to readdress what was important. Just give it a month or two, it turned into, you just didn't have time to be reactionary anymore. It got boring being reactionary.
Yeah.
You had to figure something else out to do.
It's wild talking about fear, because I had to have this long conversation with my youngest daughter, who she's 12, and she's just a little rebel, and she gets her mind made up on something, and you're not going to change her mind. And she was just railing about people being afraid and the masks, or people living in fear. And I don't live in fear. I choose faith over fear, which is all things we've instilled in her since birth. But then I had to explain to her, I'm like, hey, we all have our button. I see some pretty hardcore pipe hitting dudes on a daily basis that COVID scared the shit out of some of them. Some of these guys are long-term SF guys and Rangers that they didn't leave their house for a year, and it's like, man, this guy's done something that will make most people pee their pants. But then this virus has them, self-quarantine for over a year.
Yeah, I mean, all of us were freaked out. I remember because we were tracking it December 19. We started watching it around here. And then Lee, Zach, and I went to Korea in January for the World Peace Summit. And, they were already dealing with it over there, but you couldn't go through a door without hand sanitizer. Everybody was wearing masks, and it was starting to ramp up. And then when we got back here, it started getting really intense. And I was like, okay, people are going to freak out. And so, I 4 months worth of food in my house at a minimum. And I wasn't messing around, because you never know how bad it is. I mean, everybody was planning for the end of the zombie apocalypse coming, but you just didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was scary, right? And then you can't trust like all the numbers and all the information that's out there. So you just really never know how bad it is.
Right.
Like, is it a real thing? Oh, it's totally a real thing.
Yeah.
How bad it is? Well,
Yeah.
it's to be debated, right? And fear will and it's the collective energy, the collective fear. You have in the book I'm reading right now, I try to listen to it every Q4, is Conversations with God. You ever heard about it?
No.
It's written by a guy named Neil Donald Walsh, and he wrote a hate letter to God essentially in the early 90s and then started dictating back his words, and it ended up being like one of the better spiritual writings that's out there. And it just talks about the collective energy and the collective manifestation of fear, like what that does. And there's so many people who are whipped into it that were actually generating this outcome. You just mentioned it, the guy who had the sleeve on his arm manifested that years later. Yeah. And so what is our collective fear regarding this virus doing to all of us? Just interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So fast forward.
I think something you touched on, writing an angry letter to God. Have you ever seen the movie The Apostle with what's his name, Robert Duvall?
No, I haven't seen that either.
So he plays kind of a wayward pastor that there's a scene where he's just yelling. He is yelling at God. Yeah. And for me, that was this moment where I was like, that dude right there has more faith than anybody I know. It's a fictional thing, but it's like, if you say you believe in God, I do, and if you've never been angry and yelling at your God, then do you really believe in him? Because you got to share those moments, in every way. So I find it interesting that, that was an angry letter to him. I'm like, that's a person of faith right there.
When I got out of the Army, I knew I was in need of a perspective change. Getting out of 2nd Ranger Battalion and being injected into the Western Washington area, which is typically a lot softer than 2nd Ranger Battalion. I followed this website, Higher Perspective, and they put out this blog post, 7 books that will rapidly change your perspective. And Zen and the Art of Happiness was the first one, which is just a fantastic read. Super short read. I recommend everybody read it. But it's everything that happens is the best possible thing that could happen. In fact, it's the only possible thing that could happen because the universe always conspires in its own best interest. And the next one was Conversations with God. And it doesn't matter whether you're Jew, Christian, Muslim, like this book holds truth for all parties. It's just a different way of thinking about things. But that book really started the rhythm and discipline behind like thinking what you're going to do. For example, they really brought up the concept of want, like, oh, I want to lose weight. Well, like if you say you want to lose weight, then you're going to get exactly what you want is want, because you say you want to lose weight versus I am losing weight. Yeah. And the driving part around that, in which, I try to listen to the book every Q4, because you pick up something new every time you listen to it, and then you reflect on your year and like figure out how you're going to go into the new year. And just the collective manifestation of this between the media, the commercials, the marketing, like the conversations at work or on the water cooler, everything. It's so crazy how fast our society has changed and polarized in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
And we're manifesting it on our own. We're manifesting this anxiety and this anger and this negative outcome because I think people almost want it to happen to prove they're right.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember just being totally shocked. I have 2 customers, amazing guys, and they came in right at the beginning, and they looked at me, and they're like, "Oh, well, we're probably gonna get it." And I saw this sparkle in their eyes, and I was like, "Man, I've never been so different from somebody." Like, here I love these guys, and how supportive they are of us, but wow, you literally have a look of joy in your eyes predicting that you're probably going to get a disease. I'm like, wow. I mean, you just spoke that into existence, So.
Andy, what's your thought around it?
Like, especially with those 2 guys, like, I haven't seen anybody say it like that, but I can also remember my own point in that, in like that following April, like after March. And like, but these guys know me, they've heard me say it before, of, you know, I was going to bed, like checking my temperature every day. Like, how do I feel? Like, is there anything weird? For a few weeks, about a month, it was, it was pretty intense. And then at the same time, you know, I had a week or two's food around, but I wasn't like worried about it or planning the way Griff was. You know, like, I'm a good cook. I can cook. You can give me literally 4 ingredients from the store, and it's like, I can bake, I can do all that stuff. So that part of it was all fine. But there was also a point in it of just, yeah, I'm probably going to get this. Like, if it's everywhere,
Yeah.
and I choose not to just stay here and then choose not to control everybody that's around me, like, good chance I'm going to get this. It wasn't like, yeehaw, but there was a certain sense of like just peace that comes from that, of like, okay, this is a possible outcome. You know, I'm not going to be afraid of that. You know, make the best decisions I can and balance with all the other decisions I have to make and the other things that I want to experience on a day-to-day basis and so forth, within reason and, you know, out of respect to others. But yeah, it would be, I'm sure that there's plenty of people that it was just to a certain extent exciting, you know, like, here's a whole bunch of chaos that just got dropped on a global scale into the mix of everything. And, shit, man, if this would have gone, if this would have gone down in my 20s, I probably would have been one of those people that was like, chaos, like, here it goes. Like, let's see if will this blow up the credit system? Like, that'd be great. You know, like, you know, all that stuff. Like, I was that guy. Yeah. I was like looking at all of that kind of stuff. So,
God, dude, we were full on into it. Like, I had my crew established. We were all buying like long range radios. We were doing ham checks, like across bouncing off radio towers between here and, you know, Southern Washington, you know, figuring out.
Griff was ready.
Like, it was straight up ready to go. We all had a plan where we were going to meet, where we were going to go, like what we were going to do. Like, everybody's got to bring their own food. Like, we're not feeding anybody else. Like, you got to be ready for this, because we just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then and I told everybody, I was like, I pray to God it doesn't go this bad. I honestly do. But if it does, I don't want to be the guy who looks at my kids and say, what are we going to do? And I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was my main motivation factor behind it.
The clearest point of like seeing the fear of this whole thing went down, like when the first person died in Washington in January, I was shopping that Sunday morning, you know, and I don't watch enough news, listen to enough news to know what was going on. And I got to the store and it was batshit crazy, you know, and Fred Meyer is where we went, and somebody said, "You been to Costco yet?" And of course, it was the toilet paper run.
Oh yeah, I remember that day.
In the store that day, and it was just like, holy shit, man! And of course, everybody's freaked out about this thing that somebody just died from, and it's all that packed in line with each other, talking about it,
Right.
like face to face, like, and like 2 people back from me in the line. Somebody coughed really loud, and like 10 people just like got the F away from that. Like, on that day, it was just that fast. Yeah. Somebody coughed in a line at the grocery store and like damn near got run out of the place. Yeah. And it was like, okay, like, we got to calm down a bit, a little bit here.
There's a local radio personality that has railed against the toilet paper hoarders, who then now, after almost 2 years, said on the radio the other day that his family won't need to buy toilet paper until 2023. And he admitted that he's a total hypocrite. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
yeah, anybody
like, I've got a good stockpile, but not 2 years worth.
I hate to say this, guys, but we've traveled to far off and distant places.
Absolutely, you don't need it.
You don't need it. Like,
figure that shit out.
You can use a rag. You could wash a rag. You're gonna be fine. You're actually cleaner that way sometimes. You know, like, it's okay. But I think the one moment I had over the last year, which makes me hope and think that more common people like take veterans seriously, like when they get home, is I remember being in the store with a chef, and we hadn't gone to the grocery store, but this woman would shop every day. I mean, she lived in food. And it was the first time going to the store after weeks of being at home. And we went to the grocery store and we got like 3 aisles in, and she's like, I gotta go. I gotta get outside. I can't be in here. And just the like overwhelming fear of this person. We had to go outside, hold on to her for a few minutes and be all right. And it made me think like, oh, now people know what veterans feel like when they come home from combat.
Sure.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys can appreciate that a little bit more. Just being out in public and being like sketched out over the shoulder, who's near me, what's going on. Like maybe there might be a little more empathy and compassion around that. That was one of the realizations I had a couple months into maybe about April timeframe. I think that happened.
Yeah, once people started actually going back out a little bit more.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we're violating our own rules here because I usually hate talking about Corona, right? But we've done nothing but talk about Corona for like 2 podcasts now. Yeah.
Not completely.
Not completely. All right. So what do you got going on this week, Andy?
The rest of this week, I'm heading to Montana. This is the pre-winter check. Go take care of mom, clean up the property, like that kind of stuff, but just get out of town for a minute. So that'll be good.
Any developments with the bear, or is the bear already asleep for the winter?
No, the bear moved on. Like small town Montana is pretty cool. They're up in Sanders County, which I think at this point might be up to 12,000 people in the county or something. It's 2 or 3 times the size of King County. When I lived there, there was 5,000 people and no traffic lights. Parents owned a bar, town of 400 people. That kind of scene, right? And so there was one blinking light at Highway 200 in the cutoff road to Hot Springs, and that was it. But like driver's ed, you had to drive 2 hours to Missoula to go learn how to do traffic in driver's ed. It's out there. But mom's been out there for over 30 years, and my stepdad Bob, he passed away in last October, and so we're just making sure she's cool, and she's doing great. But it was August. She's got a couple fruit trees and whatnot, and a couple bears showed up and just raised hell and climbed the pump house for the well and lost power to the pump. For whatever reason, they ripped the power off the building to the pump house. But like Fish and Game out there just comes out and is like, okay, and they got these like portable electric fences and set it up all around her shit, and we'll put it around the tree too, and this, that, and the other thing. And next year, just call us in July, we'll just come set it all back up. Nobody cares about anything. Nobody charges them for anything. Like the sense of community that's going on out there is really, really cool. And for years, my wife and I were like, oh, what happens when mom and Bob get old and they're so far from a hospital and everything else. And now that she's out there alone, I look at it and it's like, really? Anything short of a really bad heart attack or a stroke, she couldn't be in a better place. Like outside of that, where it's like, okay, you had a stroke and the difference of 30 minutes to a hospital and 5 is like, exponentially different. She's more supported, more cared for, more known, more looked after within her community of 80-year-olds out there that are all 20 miles apart from each other than she could possibly be anywhere else, and so plugged in and so solid. So it's cool to go out and do that and goof off. And I'll probably wrench on but I got a 57 GMC that was Bob's, like half-ton truck.
The perfect level of patina. It's so gorgeous.
It's
it's so cool.
It's pretty damn cool, and got that running again, and not time to bring it out here yet, but at least go start it and screw around with it. It's still terrifying to drive. It needs some real work, but
isn't that weird how the closer your neighbors get, the farther we get from them?
Sometimes,
like I can practically touch our neighbor's house, and there's neighbors I couldn't tell you their name. And so I'm part of the problem, but this Washington's weird. Like we've even done the thing where we take the cookies to all the cul-de-sac neighbors' houses every year, and there's people that like barely open the door and take their cookies and say thank you and close the door. It's like,
you're probably better off you start dropping beer off there.
Probably.
Yeah. beer and cookies are good. I mean, I'm down with beer and cookies for sure. But there's the grass is always greener, right? Like if you live somewhere that's super dense, then you find peace where it's, quiet, and you get people that live out like that. And as someone who's lived in both places, the practical thing is, and everybody there says it, like, of course everybody's constantly trying to know what everybody else is doing and in each other's business, because there's just not anything to fucking do. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing to do. So somebody says something about somebody and the other thing and then that, and it's all, that's a 15-minute conversation, after you put gas in your car for the, it's just that, it's not gossip there. It's just culture. But you don't, it's not looked upon in this weird way just because it's hard to, find community when it's literally 20 minutes for 2 people or 20 people or whatnot. When I was there in high school, I remember we lived in Helena for a long time. And then my parents' midlife crisis, my mom worked for the state auditor, was her office manager and whatnot. And they bought this bar in Trout Creek, Montana. And we go up there. I'm like, okay, this is crazy and whatnot. And my graduating high school class goes from basically 500 kids to 44. And I did not get to introduce myself to a single person in that school that did not already know my name. When I walked in after spring break, day 1, junior year of high school, went to the office people knew who I was. They knew I was coming, whatever. And there was nobody that was like, oh, what's your name? Like, nobody. It's like, oh, you're Andy. So, whoa. I am not going to be able to go meet somebody new to me. Yeah. But then it took 2 weeks and you ran out of new people. There just was no, we could walk out the door right now and inside 90 seconds go shake hands with somebody we don't know. That ends in 14 days in a community like that. So I don't know. I consider that for myself pretty valuable lesson to remember that, when people are like, oh, I want my space and whatnot. Well, that's the hard thing to attain here,
Yeah.
It's.
You read any books right now?
I am right now. I'm reading fiction, True Believer, the Jack Carr, one of the Jack Carr books.
I've heard a lot about Jack Carr. I haven't picked up any of his books yet.
They're good. They're entertaining. He's kind of a modern day, Gwat. What's his name? The guy that did all the Rainbow Six and.
I haven't read any of those.
I know who you're talking about. Clancy.
Hunt for Red October. Tom Clancy. Yeah. He's kind of a modern day Tom Clancy. He gets a little bit too in the weeds with the exact make and model of a particular weapon or the exact proper nomenclature of camouflage. It's like, dude, just nobody cares. Just say camo.
No, the gear careers care.
Oh, God.
The gear careers care. So I got this one. It was in that book, It doesn't matter.
It's authentic. He did his research before he.
Well, it's funny though. Every weapon he mentions, it's the most expensive possible weapon because, of course, that's all a SEAL Team 6 member would ever use. And it's like, all right.
Meanwhile, Colt. Andy, you're reading Dune right now, the 3rd book.
Yeah, Children of Dune. I'm into that Empire, sci-fi stuff. Tried to get in. I've been reading that series. I've read the first 2 books of Dune a couple of times, and now finally getting into the 3rd one. But Foundation's the one that I really want to get into. Read about half of that book and got to come back to it, and that's Isaac Asimov, old classic stuff. But there's a thread in that one that I find myself when I read fiction that I can track with it, and then life gets in the way of it. I have to stay with it daily, and if I step away for 3 or 4 days or a week, I'm starting the book over. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like stopping to pee every 5 minutes and watch a movie and enjoy it. Like you have to have like a certain amount of rhythm to it, or you break it up too much and it doesn't work. But Foundation was very cool. Was very cool. And I think somebody just did a series on that one as well.
Really? What's it? I mean, is it out of the Dune?
No, it's Asimov. So it's the really rough basis of it all is there. It's in the future, whatever. People all over the galaxy, all that kind of shit. But like Earth centric, right? And some mathematician figures out how to mathematically predict the future of existence. And his formula basically says that we're fucked. Right? And it's
Obviously.
right. So the establishment obviously hates that and him and the whole thing. And he sets up this whole structure of like time released information and scatters it around the galaxy and gets some people into it that's like, while it can say that you're screwed, this is how it's going to rebuild. And it's on like a 100,000-year timeline. It's on this huge long timeline of like this information needs to get dropped at these points to have any hope of some sort of civilization.
So he can predict that with his mathematical model as well.
Yeah. So basically the guy created the foundation of the rebuilding post-apocalypse kind of thing. So it takes these big time leaps from like kind of time to time through it. Really cool book, like really, really cool book. But I've enjoyed that. And I didn't get too much into sci-fi until I read Dune a long time ago. And that was a long time ago. But have you read that book?
No.
It's awesome. It's so good. And it's not like, it's not laser beam, shoot 'em up sci-fi. It was funny. A guy that a good friend of mine, he's a chef, was like, yeah, man, he saw this meme that said Dune is like Star Wars for Tool fans, which is perfect. It was like,
Makes sense.
it was just perfect. Like it's not light reading, but it's really Game of Thrones in space is what it is. But houses and leaders and all this political shit. And I mean, Herbert was like a speechwriter for Johnson or somebody in the.
You were mentioning that the other day.
Yeah, so like his knowledge of just politics and all of that is super clear.
The only thing I remember about the original Dune, because I was gonna watch it,
The 1984 Dune movie, the David Lynch one.
was like the big worm.
Big sandworm, sure.
Sandworm. No, not the sandworm dude, but the dude who moved in liquid who had all the bodyguards around him that was kind of like an influential.
Oh yeah, Baron Harkonnen, the guy that floated around.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the guys I know who you're talking about.
Is he in the new Dune?
Yeah. I mean, the characters are all there, and if you're talking about the Guild Navigators, which are the guys that were like had the guards, and it was like the big floating case of like the fish looking thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they represent them much different in the new movie, and that's their key in the book. The new movie was so good. God, they did a good job with it.
I've been contemplating reading the book before going to see the movie, but I'm afraid it's going to be out of theaters by the time I can finish the book.
Yeah, either way, it doesn't matter. The movie's great. Like if you watch the movie, read the books again, you're going to be like, oh. And if you know the story well and you watch the movie, then it's like, oh, this is all. It's a good movie.
It's good either way.
Yeah. They did such a good job with it.
Yeah, I just finished this book called The Tiger. It's about a man-eating tiger in eastern Russia, in Primoria.
Where's Primoria?
Primoria is like where the Russia touches China, touches the Vladivostok, that area, and eastern like touches the Pacific. Okay. It's like, and they just talk about how it was a really good book because it goes into the history of Russia, it goes into the history of tigers, it goes into the history of like man and tiger, but then it's telling it all within this tale of this like tiger that's raging through this town and just eating people, and how the guys had to go out and go get the tiger. And just the whole story of like, it's just really interesting.
Man meets nature.
Were there ever tigers in that cold area?
Have the biggest tigers, the biggest apex predators on the planet.
Wow.
Are there. Yeah, they're bigger than Bengal tigers, everything. Wow. They're massive. Right. And you think about how, I mean, it's essentially east of Siberia. They have Siberian tigers there, but they say it was like during the Ice Age, it was this weird thing where all the geology and all the plants like got shoved together in this area that kind of stayed. And then after the ice thawed back, it just created this just unique landscape and like environment that's just different on planet Earth.
So
It's like a jungle northwest, essentially.
oh wow, this is totally new information to me, because that was gonna be my next question is, what the hell good are orange and black stripes gonna do in that part of, because you see it in India, it makes a lot of sense, but
then they're in feet of snow as well too in the winter, and they're all thicked up and furred up, and they're massive.
wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, and so they talk about like all the different size and how they essentially they say like a big female tiger you measure by the pad on the foot, and it's like 3.5 inches wide, and the one that they were trying to track down was a big male, it was like 5.25. So it's this super massive tiger they were trying to find that was.
I mean, that's bear paw size. That's not grizzly bear paw size, but that's a big bear.
And these tigers will kill bears.
Well, yeah, they're tigers.
Yeah. Like, it was what's that? There's a show, The Happy Place. I think it's on whatever one of the streaming channels, but it's where people go to heaven, and there's this guy, and there's this like lies are like tigers. They are bad. But throughout the premise of the book, they just have like this law that was, from the natives that were there before, the Russians had moved east and everything else. But like they have a very, I don't know what the right word for the relationship is, but if you don't harm the tiger won't harm you. And if you, the symbiotic, and if you kill something and you leave it for the tiger, like they won't come attack you. And then other times too, like if you're nice to a tiger, they'll leave part of a kill for you to take off. But if you steal off a tiger's kill, which is kind of one of the premises of this book, is they think that this tiger started getting pissed at man because this tiger killed a boar, and a guy found it and took a haunch off the boar, and the tiger just tracked the dude down and was pissed at him, killed him because he stole some of his food. And they just talk about like being in debt with the tiger. And they say guys who have interactions with tigers too, they think they're marked, their soul. And they talk about this one guy who just by accident got caught in between a pair of mating lions. He was a research biologist, and they were tracking a female, and all of a sudden he turns around and this freaking male tiger is on him, grabbing him by the leg and just crushing his leg and his jaws. And he goes from absolute fear to fury and just punches the tiger in the face. And the tiger realizes that, he's not really a threat. The tiger like backed up. But after that moment, and he's a tiger biologist, anytime he gets around any other tiger, you could be 20 people in a room, that tiger will hone in on him and be pissed at him. There was some sort of transfer of energy between him and that tiger, and it's a uniform thing between people that have survived tiger attacks and cats. Like the cats don't like them once they've had that kind of exchange. It's just interesting.
I mean, we know stuff like that happens with like crows too, right? Like
the murder of crows.
They generationally pass on information, and that this guy's a dick or whatever, and they are going to harass him, or vice versa, that they're a good person. And so it's weird. Yeah. In Iraq, in our our team room was inside the S2 for this artillery battery that we were attached to, and we had on our whiteboard we had a tigers versus lions on the, and so whenever somebody new came in, before we would answer anything, no matter who they were, tigers versus lions, who is it? And we just kept a tally of all the votes going. And I was in the minority. I choose lions over tigers. And my reasoning for that is, from what little research I have done, a tiger's prey is normally small deer. A lion's taking down wildebeest. So while the tiger has them in its speed and size, the lion is kind of like Mike Tyson, where he's shorter, stockier, built for just absolute violence. But I'm not saying I'm right. So that's what I'm.
Yeah. So if you scroll through my Instagram feed, it's guns, right? My friends, motivational, spiritual stuff, and then big cats. And there's just one thing. It was the same animal that would have been in Africa. So it might have been like a water buffalo or something like that. And it's like lions attack a water buffalo, and there's like 7 or 8 of them. Tiger attacks a water buffalo, 1. like taking it down. And I was like, okay, tiger's a bad machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see those guys in, say, India that are riding on elephants. And then you just see them like riding along, and all of a sudden you just see it looks like jaws coming up out of the water, but you see the farm field just wattering back and forth. And all of a sudden this tiger's 20 feet out of the air climbing up on the back of a freaking elephant to try to go after these dudes. And then the video cuts off and you're like, oh, that didn't turn out well. No, that didn't.
Have you ever been to the zoo when they're feeding them? Feeding lions and tigers? It is the most... It shakes. You can feel your heart shaking inside of its little sack in your chest when they are roaring for its time to be fed. That sound is just something that you have to experience. It's just, I mean, I'm not a fan of zoos, but when you're in that room and they let out one of their deep roars, it's just primal. It doesn't quite.
There's genetic memory there that's just
it's
like run away, bro.
It's the most powerful thing that you feel it, in your soul. Like this is pure power.
They talk about that in the book. It's like when the tiger attacks, they've described, through multiple interviews, how people describe it, and they just say it is soul shrinking. Like when it's like an F-16 taking off, combined with a Mack truck at full throttle, with the air horn on, and like everything you could possibly imagine is a loud, like fully immersive sound. They say doesn't touch what a tiger does when it's like doing its thing. But odd story, I was at a speaking event last week in Florida, and a guy that I met there, his brother actually has a big cat sanctuary in Shelton, Washington. We got linked up with him, so hopefully we'll get to go out there and see some big cats, like up close and personal. So hopefully Lapine doesn't listen to this. I'm gonna take her out there for a little Christmas gift. Go out there and go hang out with some big cats.
You got Washington's own Joe Exotic.
I hope so. I hope so.
There will be a mullet.
I've been contemplating growing the mullet.
Why not?
I mean, it's coming back in. I was actually at the gym the other day, and I saw this dude rocking the best mullet ever, just working out. And you don't want to be like creeping on dudes in the gym, but like like he was in the middle of his workout, and I just want to go like, man, would you come? Have you ever modeled before? Would you model for us? Yeah. But he's kind of like a rounder dude, but he had like the perfect like short curly blonde hair, but it was done in a mullet, so it was like the perfect short curls, and he just looked angry, and I was like, oh, he needs to come wear some Ranger panties and model for us. Like that's our dude.
Yeah. So even if that goes poorly for you, you at least got to ask and have somebody recording.
Yeah, I didn't get the opportunity to. Normally, most guys go to the gym to like spy on hot girls. I'm just waiting for the rounder mulleted dude to show up at the gym again so I could talk.
Gotta have a mullet, big legs, and like a dad bod. Like that's who Griff's looking for.
It's exactly who I'm looking for. I walked inside the gym last night, and there was this dude, and I haven't seen a human being that large, like full on muscle bound, in forever. And I immediately looked right past that dude, and I was like hunting for the dude with the mullet. Yeah. I have problems.
No, you have a task list is what you have.
Yeah.
That just happens to cause weird problems.
But I mean, usually most people are receptive to it. Like, hey man, you ever model? Like what? Like, hey man, would you come shoot? We own a flip flop company.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Well, we got to have you wear some short shorts and have chicks whistle at you. I'm in. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty then. Yeah. So what do you guys want to cover? Shit that pissed you off this week or conspiracy theories of the week? Oh, either or.
Well, you are my SME when it comes to all things Afghanistan.
Okay.
And the shit that pissed me off this week was we're starting to see, maybe it's not starting, but I finally heard it, which is starting to be that they're starting the rhetoric to change the narrative to say, to paint the Taliban as our allies in the fight against ISIS. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, of course, here it is. Here it is. This is what they've been looking for.
Well, it is true because the caliphate is trying to get reestablished. I got forwarded a video last week of a couple ISIS-K dudes rolling in a tuk-tuk, open air tuk-tuk, rolling, and they were just sitting there with either a cell phone or a GoPro or whatever it was, and a couple Taliban guys came. And you know how they have the roads there with a little green median in between? And the white Toyota rolled up and it got stuck in traffic, and these guys just hopped out of the tuk-tuk and littered, just good 10-second ambush, just dumped mags into this thing. Obviously, they got everybody in the car, hopped back in their tuk-tuk, and drove off. Like, the fight is on in Afghanistan. Taliban versus ISIS-K. And it's game on. So that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a real thing.
Yeah, no, not that. That was not the conspiracy theory. That's just shit that pissed me off. Because are we then going to say how long is it before they're just openly talking about the Taliban as though they are our true allies?
Well, or legitimately recognized government or whatever. It's funny because just the obvious thing there would be, I was just try and think about this stuff a little bit different. Like, we fight the Taliban forever. All this stuff goes down. Okay. It's not like we were told on August, 13th or whatever it was that these guys are our friends now. But if the enemy of the enemy is my friend, then shouldn't we be allying with ISIS-K? If we're going to pick one. Right? Like, but then to be told, oh, but we've got to fight ISIS-K, and therefore we have to ally with the Taliban, that's just insanity. Right?
I mean,
like, that's just insanity. It's like, how do you actually just protect the people and keep them out of the crossfire and let those guys go waste each other and get it the fuck over with, and can we move on? Like,
I mean, you could dial this all the way back to Libya, right? It was like when, Tulsi Gabbard, one of our favorite politicians, she traveled to Syria, and she was like, no, ISIS was created by U.S. policy and all the weapons that flowed out of Libya into Syria that helped stand up ISIS, right? Now you have this ISIS-K, this boogeyman, right? Which we did a pretty good job of schwacking over the past couple of years in Syria. I mean, that stuff got done right quick when the boys were allowed to do the work, and now we squeezed them and they jumped into somewhere else. That we created a power vacuum, and there's a common theme here. For the guys who aren't familiar with the map or the region of Khorasan, but it's essentially eastern Iran, southern Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, kind of Tajikistan, and northern Iraq, and it's what they consider one of the birthplaces of civilization or their belief system. So they're trying to establish their caliphate there in the same way they tried to do it in Iraq. So I mean, it's a real thing, and it just seems so foreign, to people here. I guess the only equivalent would be, for those of you guys who are familiar with, is the state of Jefferson.
Oh yeah.
Which is the people in southern Oregon and northern California that want to secede from California and Oregon. They call it the state of Jefferson.
right.
That would be like the people in the state of Jefferson, like starting to go to war, to get their state.
Yeah.
That's, the U.S. based equivalent, but we don't do that here.
Yeah.
But unfortunately there, they do.
Yeah. But just back to your point, tying that all the way back around is just so clearly obvious of, well, these guys are bad, and these other bad guys that were bad don't like them either. So we're going to have to make ourselves look like the hero by allying with the guys that used to be our enemy.
Do you think our
It's
collective memories are that short?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it goes within the first week of the Afghan withdrawal. Like when the president stands there and talks about the guy, or sits there by the guy who falls off the airplane, that soccer player, and goes, oh, that was 4 or 5 days ago. When that's your commander in chief, the head of your nation, saying like, oh, don't worry about that. That was only 4 or 5 days ago. They are of the firm belief that we're going to forget. We're going to forget right quick. I already forgot about Libya. I already forgot about Syria. Really already forgot about Iraq, right? Which is still degrading. And I called this when I was on one of the news stations. It's like they're betting on football season rolling around and just distracting everybody. And honestly, that's what I have written in here. Like the stuff that pisses me off about the week is just the lack of news coverage on Afghanistan. I guess the Pentagon did their finding on that drone strike in retaliation for the bomb. 7 innocent people, an aid worker and family died. I mean, we knew that within hours of it happening, and now it's just coming out. Nobody is being held negligent for that.
There was no negligence, no wrongdoing. So then what was it? Yeah.
I was a Ranger Company fire support officer. If I were to drop a bomb into 7 innocent people, I would go to Leavenworth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
What?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then, and again, like I talked about this, I think on my last podcast, but I don't watch the news very often. I stopped a while ago, and I've had plenty of run-ins with the news. And we've been on the media tons over the past decade, and it's very rare. Like, it's the exception to the rule when the media gets the names, the places, and the facts right, even though we are very clear about what we send forward to them. Even before then, in my time in the military, like, I've just noticed there's just inconsistencies with the truth that's being reported in the media. And so I just stopped watching. But now, like, I do watch just to see. And usually I could do it on mute, but I just flip back and forth between Fox, MSNBC, CNN, and a couple other news channels. And there's just a complete lack of coverage on Afghanistan. And I just don't know it's because the media is too big of a pussy to go, or they just want it to go away. I don't know. But Andy's theory is it's just going to come back up around the elections. And it should.
Well, yeah.
And
it's and not because anybody really cares. It's just shooting fish in a barrel. It's something to talk shit about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what elections have really come down to. It's not like, what can we do? It's what did you do bad? So I'm going to talk more about what you did bad than what I can do good, and hopefully rile my base up more than you can rile yours and win. And now it's, now they're playing field hockey. They're not actually, like, campaigning. On some level, there's smart people in there that are, that care and so on and so forth. But yeah, if we don't think that the opposing Republicans, especially in the next presidential round, and for sure during the midterms, aren't going to be absolutely lighting that fire, they're going to try, and then we'll find out if the block and tackle constituency is just saying, yeah, I'm tired of that, I don't want to hear about it anymore, or if it gets them riled up. Yeah. But it's not so much about trying to get, I don't think it has as much to do with trying to get, people that may be supporters of the current administration understand how bad it was, as much as people that oppose it fired up and, like, batshit crazy against them, right? And creating momentum.
The part that just kills me is it's like people are angry about what their guy did here or didn't do here, and they're completely skipping past the fact that there are millions of people suffering under just oppressive violence as a result of failure and negligence on many U.S. agencies, and they did it with your tax dollars.
Yeah, right? Across four administrations.
Yeah, the multiple administrations. I say this goes all the way back to Clinton.
Yeah.
Clinton won, right? Or even Bush, maybe even Reagan. But you could even say Reagan because after, or even with the Soviets, right? Like, we abandoned Afghanistan. We could have taken care of this in the late 80s.
Yeah.
You could say it goes back that far. And they're doing it with all your dollars and everything else. And meanwhile, it's poor people that suffer. Like, Americans typically skip past this and they just go get angry at some dude in a suit behind a podium versus feeling any compassion or empathy for families who are freezing and dying. That's the in my heart of heart, that's the thing that, like, crushes me about our country right now and our media and the way they represent it is, like, they're just using it to point blame to get to win their argument versus moving people to help the less fortunate. I'm so mad. Grr.
So I know one of your, correct me if I'm wrong, one of your choices of who Combat Flip Flop supports is the keeping girls in school or putting them in school, because they my understanding of why you were doing that was because educating girls has second, third, exponential, effects that will, over a long term, drastically change the culture of an entire country.
There's not been one sociological study done that disproves the fact that educating women is bad for
Right.
You can't do it. And all the societies where they focus on educating women, they all prospered, were cleaner, more environmentally friendly, socially stable, etc.
So how do we do that proactively instead of waiting until we've been in the war 20 years to start doing these sorts of things?
Yeah, I say this often, but I think as an American taxpayer, if the government said, "Hey, we went and waged war in Afghanistan. Hey, we kicked the Taliban out, we kicked Al Qaeda out. Yeah, we didn't get the dude, but we're just really going to focus on like educating girls. So every girl in the country by the time we leave is going to be literate. So they have a good stable base to work from. It chokes off the recruitment base for radicals. Women can support themselves. The radicals can't raise a base because moms can have a job, put their kids in school.
Right.
You're going to go like most radicals come from extremely impoverished homes where these young kids are just trying to take care of their mom. And that's where they're recruited into these radical groups because the radical groups pay us to take care of the mom while they're raising these kids up to strap bombs to themselves, right? That's the way it works. It costs them over the course of 5 or 6 years to do this. It costs them a couple $1,000s to create a weapon that will make it all over the world's media versus us, Rangers or SEALs or whomever, cost millions of dollars to train. Is a financially unsustainable fight for us. And so the sustainable way that we could do it is like spend a few $100s, teach a girl how to read, keep her in school. It's like $200 a year to keep a girl in school, like 12 grades, so I think $2,400. Get a woman all the way out of high school where she can, go to college or get a higher education, but at least then they can provide for their families with some form of employable skill. So that way the kids can go to school themselves, not get recruited to be radicals. I mean, that's our whole mentality and mindset behind it. We've been saying it for upwards of a decade now. And like, that's all washed away. Sucks.
I mean,
why is that so hard for us to understand, do you think? Because that's just absolute Chinese to your average citizen.
Because Hollywood doesn't show the benefits of that. What they show is the machismo and the bravado of the U.S. military, our power and our might with all these cool weapon systems and drones and night vision goggles and blah, 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 blah. Right? And that's what they show. The good guy who gets the girl in the end is the one that kills the most people, right? And makes it out.
Yeah, I think
it's trained into it.
Well, it's not like an exciting story, I suppose. But I don't think I can't remember talking to somebody about what we've done over the last 10 years and the why. And explaining it and having them like glaze over and get bored. Where it's difficult is that on one hand, yeah, you need, the guys with all the guns doing the stuff, like fighting the guys with all the guns doing the stuff. Like you need that to a certain extent. But I mean, Griff could probably tell you what was the last. Well, we have like 6,000 people in Afghanistan for the last 18 months with no casualties, like kept the Taliban down. 6,000 people, right? Like soldiers. 0 fatalities. Relative peace in the country. Shit got bad when we started saying, okay, we got to get out of here. But from the other side of it, like our work going after grants and some of the government money available through USAID and other forms that was supposed to be there to help build infrastructure. If infrastructure that you were building in their eyes wasn't something that you could basically shoot, blow up, write off on taxes, like, is it a building or a road or a bridge or a hospital or whatever? Like, they couldn't wrap their head around that investing in the fucking people is the absolute foundational. It was the absolute foundational component of all of that. And that, I mean, there was just so much money, resources, energy, and good intentions were just flushed into bureaucracies, into, literally greedy middlemen. Like when we get told by USAID that they had enough money that they couldn't actually vet, they had enough applicants for the money that they couldn't actually vet it internally and had to use a portion of the money to vet the applicants. And then we see how that goes, where a giant portion of the money that was even available in the first place was just literally eaten up by the bureaucracy to try and decide who to give it to. And it, like, head exploding nonsense, all the while schools don't have what they need, girls aren't getting educated,
Yeah, I think one of our favorite conversations and was so they had this program out for cashmere, and we did our cashmere chamas. We were the DoD did a program, and we were the only people to commercially sell the product. And when we had it, we sold out. It was a fucking fantastic product. It was a cashmere scarf, 44 inch by 44 inches. I've got a couple of them still from the original run. Some of the best gear I've ever had in my entire life. And we figured out how to do it with biblical technology. And we actually, when I say we, mainly Andy, worked with our Afghan manufacturers to figure out ways to comb cashmere off of goats by hand, run it, through a, essentially Sleeping Beauty spinning wheel, have it dyed in country, and then across manual looms have it woven. And we just took our samples while we were applying for like literally $100,000 grant for cashmere development in Afghanistan to commercialize it, to turn into concept paper. And it was available to US businesses, Afghan businesses. So we had our manufacturer apply too. And they basically came back and said, we have no experience managing any businesses in Afghanistan.
You don't.
We don't. No.
Right.
We have no experience in cashmere, in which we were the only company to do it through the DoD program. And I'm literally holding our finished samples in our hand that had just flown in from Afghanistan. And I can't remember what some of the other excuses were.
Cashmere is not a sustainable industry. And then on top of it, there was some study done 2 years ago that said cashmere goats don't bite grass and break it. They rip the grass out of the ground and therefore create a climate change issue, which our government, which are desertification of the landscape, which USAID cannot sign on to.
But we're literally looking, and this is from the head of USAID, Afghanistan, Pakistan, is telling me this on a conference call.
I laughed out loud.
But I'm literally holding the paper from a USAID grant, says cashmere on it.
Yeah.
For specifically what we're doing. Like, he's telling me one thing and the dollars are going here. And this is through a subcontracted company that's supposed to be vetting the applicants. And like, are they just sitting there and saying no to everybody so they can burn up overhead?
Sure.
That would be it. That would be it.
It's funny because like, he's like, desertification is bad for the environment. And my first reply was like, well, war's pretty bad for the environment too. Like, I know I've set a couple mountain ranges on fire. It's pretty bad. Luckily he was on mute because all I got from him on the chat was, "Oh my God, that was."
Yeah, I lit Griff up on the chat in that one. Like,
you can see who got it, right?
No, because it goes through a subcontractor.
You can see them. So you'll see a big chunk of money that goes to DIA or whoever whoever the shit it is. And then what they do with it?
But then you start digging into the board members, and like the head of DAI and a couple other ones are all former USAID senior members. And so they just get out, they go to these K Street Mafia firms, they siphon all this money out, and like, it's US taxpayer dollars. I really wish people still had, and this is getting into our conspiracy theory of the week here because we're already kind of migrated into a little bit.
Go there.
Yeah, but like, I really wish people had paper pay stubs. I wish they had to mail them to you every day, so that like every week or whenever you get your paycheck, so that we can see how much of your money goes to taxes. And then if you were to just take that and divide it by 2, roughly that's what goes to state, DOD, VA, and a couple other aid organizations that are supposed to solve these problems. Roughly half of your tax dollars are taking care of all of these issues, like legacy and in future, between taking care of your veterans to planning for the future, and they're all failing. And I think the best line that I heard probably in the past 6 months is U.S. foreign policy starts with a lie and ends in failure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And if we want free medical care, if we want better educational systems, if we want all of these things, then we just need to fucking chime after our foreign policy department, because they're taking half of our national potential and pissing it down the drain. like all of the organizations that, I can't remember, a couple of years ago, I read this report that, so-and-so, the Navy just released a stealth destroyer. Some, shipbuilding agency on the East Coast just released their first stealth destroyer. And my first thought was like, fuck, I thought we came up with those in the 40s and they were called submarines.
Yeah.
And you can't help but think that those people that are working in those districts would rather like build a spaceship or figure out some sort of green energy or something that would improve the environment for their kids, whether it's socially or environmentally at some point in the future, instead of building something that, was essentially obsolete 70 years ago, but they just wrapped in some freaking stealth, wrapping and made a boat.
Yeah, but the union members of that shipbuilding local whatever are, vote for whoever got that bill.
Who got that funding? And...
All right, so here's an idea. It's free, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar. You guys familiar with the Pacific trash heap?
I've heard the floating island out there.
The floating island that's like the size of Texas. Yeah. That's just full of all the plastic because all the currents go. It just takes all the garbage out and it just floats it into this big pile. Mm-hmm. How about they build like autonomous ships that just go out there and just like yank that crap out of the ocean, use solar power and electric motors, and then just drive that stuff into a shipping lane where it like hooks onto a shipping container and then gets brought into port, and all those materials are somehow recycled or changed into some other form of something. Like, I think a shipbuilding yard that would be doing that for the environment and changing the planet would be something you're more proud of than building a couple $1 billion stealth destroyer.
Yeah. 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 I'm not over the military. I'm over the people in charge of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's really just it. Like, I'm over the need for the military, but I'm not that naive anymore. I have been that naive in my life, but I'm not that naive anymore. But the people in charge of it, like, man, I suppose if you live that insulated of a life in politics, maybe you can survive with that little common sense. But I don't know if...
Man, I had to turn off the... did you watch that Senate hearing with the SecDef and Milley and those other guys on the Afghan withdrawal? Oh, they were just getting railed and they were just backpedaling. And I firmly believe that the U.S. military was the last vestige of honor and integrity within our government.
Mm-hmm.
And they just destroyed it in a matter of hours for the American people. Well, like when they saw how screwed up the military was at the top leadership, they just screwed the pooch on that big time.
Yeah, I can't look at what happened in Afghanistan and see I just can't see a logical explanation for the last 4 months behavior, 6 months behavior. Like, once, especially starting with Bagram, like, why we let that go, the way it was let go, with the amount of armament left on the ground operable. I mean, our own factory owner's telling us now, like, he sees Taliban running around in the streets, and it's not like they're just out there pointing guns at everybody and laying waste. Half the time they're just looking for money and food like everybody else. But they're all wearing American gear. They're all packing American guns. He's like, yeah, they don't carry our AKs anymore.
Good news is they'll all be broken down in about a year.
Then we get the contracts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. I'm glad that it doesn't make sense to me, I suppose.
It's super frustrating. But is it going to change? Right? Is Hollywood still going to keep making movies? Is the Army and the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines going to still keep promoting? Or the politicians still going to keep saying the same, bullshit from behind the podium to convince young kids into this stupid game, which they have no choice? And it's to none of their benefit.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Well, I would like to end this on a positive note.
For me, it was a little different. Like I'd been in law enforcement for about 4 years before I joined the Army.
Okay.
And I was watching the news and seeing, all the different talk shows at the time, most of which have been canceled for various hosts misbehavior since then. But just a lot of people just really criticizing kind of like the troops on the ground and, this illegal war we were involved in. And I looked at it from the standpoint of like, okay, yeah, we probably are. But what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
And like, you're sitting on your couch and you're criticizing this kid. So going back, I had a moment where I had been reading a book called The Interrogators. And that will open my eyes to like, I didn't know you could join the Army and do this. Yeah. Like I would have done this like when I was 18 if I had known I could do this. And then I started looking into what I did was counterintelligence. I was like, that's my speed. That's, I'm not, I can't, I don't want to go, do any crazy jumping out of planes or anything, but like, hey, getting in people's heads, that sounds like something I would really enjoy. And,
this gives me a whole new perspective on you, by the way.
Yeah. And, and so then, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of criticism of it was always aimed, like, maybe it wasn't meant to be, but for me, it really came off as though they're criticizing those troops on the ground. Like, like, I can't believe they're doing this illegal war thing. And I just looked at it. I was like, well, they're doing something. And watching the news one night, I saw one of my training officers from the police department. He had been recalled, and I saw him kicking a door down in Fallujah as a Marine. And I was like, holy shit. Then a few days later, I was standing at Pat Tillman's mom's house. And I was like, okay, that's all the signs I need. I'm joining. And I just really had that attitude of I went in knowing, having my beliefs of how wrong we were approaching the whole thing. But I was like, well, if I'm going to pick a team, I'm going to be one of the guys helping these guys instead of sitting back and criticizing them. So I think a lot of people watch those movies and stuff and kind of get different things out of it. But I think you're right that, yeah, they are trying to, it is the big propaganda machine of like, look at all the cool shit we do. But I think there are some that it's kind of slipping past and we're going to do it anyway because we, believe in something bigger, even if we're not going to get there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the way warfare as we see it is going to change. I don't think there's ever going to be, a large war ever again. I think Vietnam kind of changed that. And I just got done reading this book, Unrestricted Warfare. It was written by two Chinese colonels in '99, and you can find it on my Instagram if you guys want to check it out.
I've seen some of your posts on that.
It is by far the best and most eloquently written book on war in the 21st century, and it was written by two Chinese colonels in '99. And everybody on the planet knows you cannot go to war against the U.S. in a full-scale war. The Gulf War proved it. You cannot do it. One of our ability to communicate, our ability to use air power, our ability to use sea power, our information, intelligence, and it's only rapidly accelerated since 2001. Our ability to coordinate a fight that fast, that quick. Nobody's going to go against us like that because they say that they see and they've seen demonstrated since 1965 how you can fight against that with the opposite of technology, low tech. And they write about it in this book. The other part of it is the reason we were so successful in the Gulf War is because we were able to beat the drum and the propaganda so hard that we got 30 other nations to join with us in less than a month to get on this bandwagon. And the book argues that, yeah, our war power is good, but our ability to bring other partners in on that is what made us the most effective. If you back up 2 to 3 months from where we are right now, nobody wants to talk to us. Our ability to wage that kind of war is now gone. Who's going to believe us? Who's going to want to work with us? We're just going to get their people hurt and straddle them with debt, right? And put them under the scrutiny if they go with us. So one, people aren't going to want to fight our technology. And then two, we can't mass an international force the way that we used to. So there's never going to be a war like that ever again. And I think people are going to have to start changing the way they think. Maybe read that book, Unrestricted Warfare, and what warfare really looks like, which comes down to education, politics, economics, technology. Like that's, unfortunately, like we say, people haven't really paid the price of fighting a war for the past 20 years. Well, I think now people are going to have to be involved. It's going to have to come, in the daily way, and they're going to have to start being mindful about what they're doing with everything, their data, their food, where they go to school, all of those things, because that's the new form of warfare. Yeah. Anyway, I digressed. Sorry.
Happens.
Yeah. But it's a podcast. That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
It is late.
Yeah. It is.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad you made it here today. This is, what'd you think of the setup?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is I'm taking a master's class in film and production. So we actually got access to a whole bunch of cameras and mics and be able to hold a podcast and show your beautiful face in addition to your beautiful voice. But I think everybody should, if you're in Western Washington, go down to the Fob. It is honestly one of the cooler breweries that I've ever been to. And when you described it to me when you first started it, I could almost picture it. And then when I walked in and you had a tattoo parlor in there and you had the bar set up the way an old Fob would be and the picnic benches and the big open space, it well beyond delivered on anything that I'd possibly imagined. You did a great job with that.
Well, thank you.
And you run a great team too. And the fact that your wife is still married to you after running a business with her for 4 years is just a testament to, how good of a leader you are and community member you are too. So I'm really proud of you, man. It's been cool to watch you grow and see your business flourish even through all the chaos. It's been 2020, 2021.
Well, thank you.
So go to Fob Brewing, bring a growler. It's a deep discount on beer.
Nice.
Yeah. And when you're there, you can definitely feel free.
Always. Yeah. Always. Thanks for coming out, man.
No, thank you.
Appreciate
It's
it.
been good.